Hello, this is BBC World News. I'm George Alagaya and we bring you a special report today. Our top story today involves a special individual without whom the world would seem a much smaller place. This famous hero ventured to new lands and impacted countless people throughout his daring expeditions. To many he is known as the epic explorer, but to us he is fondly known as George Alagaya Johnson. On this special day, the celebration of his 30th year, we will take you through the evolution of this daring individual and how he became the most celebrated global voyager this century has ever seen. And now, to our field correspondent, Charles Johnson.
Thank you. Allow me to paint a picture of one of the greatest explorers this world has ever seen. George Alagaya Johnson was born July 20th, 1992, to a loving family in a little town called Wilmette, Illinois. He had two older siblings, both of which quickly realized that their reign as the focal point of the family was over. He was known to crawl around the house just to experience every square foot of that home. He would even dress up as alternative characters, imagining himself in places all over the globe. His parents even considered signing him up for modeling to benefit the local charity. The Johnson family moved down south to Florida in the summer of 1994. It was there that George became a big brother. He also gained a furry little sister that became the mascot of the family. With his attentiveness to this long-haired Chihuahua's needs, he became, without a doubt, Serena's favorite. Given the climate in Florida, tennis was the sport that they all landed on, and George quickly mastered it. He made his way to the national scene in Georgia, to which his siblings, younger and older, and parents followed his meteoric rise and witnessed his championship as a mere 8-year-old. But this tennis star wanted more than just championships. He wanted to learn and study the world. George would collect model airplanes and visit airports just because he loved watching the logistics behind the continent connectors. We're lucky to have some further insight from his family. Listen to what they had to say.
So, how did our sweet little pitiful Pete Gorg, who I used to prop up outside Walmart with a tin cup, how did he become this intrepid, slightly OCD, Anthony Bourdain type traveler? How did it happen? Any thoughts?
Well, I love George, you love George, we all love George, and love is happiness. And we know that George is very happy and very successful just because of all of this love. But why? What specifically? And I have a list of a few things. One is George is very handsome and has big biceps. So George is one of the few and only people that I would give permission to wear a tank top. He just looks good in a tank top with his muscles bulging. The other thing that a lot of people may not know about George, but George does not move when he sleeps. And I had the great experience of sharing an apartment with him in Chicago, and I can attest he does not move 1 inch at all at night. The other thing is George has a very, very, very large appetite, and he'll always try new restaurants. And one time in Chicago, we even walked through a blizzard. I swear it was like a 3-foot snowfall to get to a restaurant that we wanted to try. And George was wearing not flip-flops, but tennis shoes. So not conducive. But George also serves. One of the great beauties of George is George has served. His first job for 4 years was a nonprofit, the Clean Energy Trust in Chicago. Then, of course, he goes to the Peace Corps, and now he's at the AmeriCorps. So I remember distinctly sitting in the audience in Chicago at the Clean Energy Trust with George and kind of giving him the backstory on who's who and what's what. Next thing I know, the next few years, George is the master of ceremonies. So here's our impressive, young, strapping, tall, good-looking, handsome George on the podium introducing the acts, as it were, at the Clean Energy Trust. So brilliant work. And then George is also not just an American citizen, but of course an English citizen. Anybody that knows George knows his great sense of humor, which is kind of like James Bond in his sense of humor, very dry and witty, but that's part of his English heritage. The other thing is George is adventurous. He spent his whole junior year in Seville, and that launched his love for Latin countries and, of course, Panama, and falling in love with Tiffany, which is really exciting. The other last thing that I want to mention about George is always positive. And you especially get this after the Miami Heat lose, or Notre Dame loses, or Florida loses. He always has a very positive spin on what happened and what's going to happen. So one last PS too. Everybody knows about George's thoughtfulness and his caring of everybody. And you especially saw that when he always would hold and caress his second sister, Serena.
Bino?
So that's why I love George, you love George, you love George, we all love George. That's why George is so successful and so happy.
So you want to know about George Johnson? Impressive son of a bitch. You know the saying, leave no stone unturned? George coined that phrase when he was just 5 years old. Even at that young age, he knew to live life to the fullest. And ever since then, his illustrious career and accomplishments in travel, in food, in beverage, many beverage. George has been the poster child for exploration. And honestly, I look up to him. Many people do. The things he's uncovered in his travels will forever inspire us. I just read his second novel the other day, and it was my third time reading it. And I was still picking up on little things that flew over my head the first couple times I read it. He's a genius. He's a marvel. And I'm lucky to be a fan of his. God damn it, George.
George Johnson, international man of mystery. Anthony Bourdain's apprentice. Some say he traveled to China without a passport. Others have it he was in Panama for a year and a half, hiking away at pigs and goats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. George Johnson, one of the best world travelers this side of the Mississippi has ever seen. Throughout our life, George has taught me so much, starting from a young age when we were traveling the state for tennis tournaments, state of Florida, as well as venturing into Alabama and Georgia. I think the most important thing he taught me was always being even keel and keeping a steady mind and being mentally strong, because the next point is always more important than the last point. In our adult lives, he's taught me so much. The biggest thing is to travel light. George Johnson has taken on Spirit, Frontier, and all flights alike with the GoRuck GR1. Traveling light is the way to go and the way to see the world the way George has, through his eyes. In Nashville, we were about 1 hour away from the Vanderbilt game, walking distance, and George said, "Oh yeah, let's walk." And we walked through some pretty sketchy parts, but George wanted to see all of Nashville, all that it had to offer, not just Broadway Street. He wanted to see the good, bad, and the ugly.
Who's this George Johnson guy?
George Johnson, you ask?
Yeah.
George Johnson, a man with a heart the size of Texas. A man that Lewis and Clark have nothing on. George Johnson, a man I've always looked up to.
George's significant travels were relatively limited to family gatherings throughout Europe up until he attended college at the University of Florida. It was there that he explored around campus and his friends took notice. About midway through college, he made the decision to study abroad in Sevilla, Spain, and he quickly gained fluency of the Spanish language. Upon graduation, he joined the likes of an elite society called Team MJ, which took him to various parts of North America, Europe, and even 2 new continents in Asia and Africa. He has developed a cohort of fellow travelers, and we were able to gather some thoughts from them.
George? Yes, I know George. We met many years ago on this very river. We were with a group of amigos, Jennifer Lopez, Owen Wilson, Eric Stoltz, Ice Cube, filming a documentary about a group of indigenous peoples. Pero durante our trip, un gran anaconda nos atacó, killed everybody. But George saved my life. He cut the snake's nose with a machete. And then we went looking for our friends, but we didn't find them. We went up and down the river, but still, no Mateo. Entonces, amigo George.
Why, hello there. George, it's your birthday, your 30th birthday. Well, Tiffany told me that I had to tell some stories about us, but I know most of them are probably PG-13 that rated R. But I guess I'll first start off that I met George back in summer B of 2010 at the University of Florida. We actually played tag. It was like a hide and go seek, get to know your college roommates and mates, and it was kind of awkward because we're all 18 years old trying to take this a little too seriously. But the story I want to tell, or the trip, even though there are many trips that we took together, is when you invited me to your mom's house and your dad's house for Thanksgiving. It was the first time I found out why you love obscene, hot, spicy foods. She cooked this amazing curry dish. I'll never forget it.
So the baboon story. It was 2014. We were in the north of Ghana in a place called Mole National Park. And we were staying at this, what could generously be described as a resort. It wasn't even running water. And we were hanging out between safari drives and walks, tossing around a tennis ball. We travel, pretty much everywhere we travel, we bring a tennis ball for this very reason. And, we're having a game of catch. There's wildlife weirdly everywhere, baboons, warthogs, all that stuff. Have to cast the Lion King. And this ranger starts waving at us, saying, "Oh, stop, put the tennis ball down, I'm like, okay, dude, thanks. Whatever, we're gonna keep playing catch. So we did, and well, we found out why the ranger told us to stop. This baboon starts charging George. He has the ball in his hand. The baboon lunges at George, but George, knowing ball security is job security, holds the ball, throws off the baboon, gets this huge scratch on his arm, and he was left with a wound on his arm. And it was kind of made us weirdly jealous because we have this cool story to tell that he's I was playing catch in Africa with my buddies, and this baboon charged me, but I fought it off and This scar right here, it's proof. Anyway, we told him we're gonna have a heck of a first date square, I guess. And I guess I'll leave it to Tiff to say whether he did bring it up at the first date. But the scar's still here today, so I'm willing to bet it came up at least the first 5. So it's really hard to pinpoint one specific travel memory with George. And so I was sitting here trying to weigh it, and I'm flip-flopping. Should I talk about the time that George dragged me under the table at the base of Denali? Or the time that George dragged me under the table in Monument Valley? Or even the time that George dragged me under the table in Whitey Bulger's favorite local haunt? And really the common thread here is I can't hang, but George is the one that's always ready for the next leg of the trip. So one specific story I can think of is the day after we got to Denali National Park. It was the day that we were going up, getting as close to the mountain as we possibly could. We were going out and doing our big hike that day. We jumped on the bus to go towards that hike, and it was maybe the only time I've ever seen the night before really start to catch up with George on one of these trips. And when I say he was as pale gets, pale as I've ever seen him, I mean it. He looked like he was down for the count. And halfway through the bus ride, we couldn't get on or off. It wasn't like there was a lot of stops on this ride, but there was one stop halfway through. It was just a bathroom break, and George jumped off, and all of us thought that this was it. This was the time that George was finally going to break. And we go out, we look at the little scenic view overlooking the valley. It's beautiful. And we turn around for 2 minutes. And we turn back, and George is perfect. Looks exactly like himself again. We didn't see anything happen. It was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. He didn't even get sick. He was fine. At one moment, I thought he was on death's doorstep. The next moment, he's ready to go on a 6-mile hike and give it his all that same night. I think that kind of speaks to the kind of traveler that George really is. The kind of traveler that is so committed to not just the destination, but the entire adventure, the entire time that we're out there, that he refuses to allow his body to get in the way, and he really makes it happen the entire time we're out there.
What can I say about George Johnson that hasn't been said 1,000 times over? He is an incredible adventurer. He is a brave spirit. And of course, he isn't afraid to venture into the unknown. Now, I have had the honor and privilege of traveling with him. And let's see, we've been to Austin, Nashville, Chicago, New York, Denver, Arizona, Salt Lake City, Tulum, London, Santa Barbara, Orlando, Omaha, Kansas City, and of course, Los Angeles. Now, the story that really exemplifies George's adventurous spirit is when he came here to visit. Now, we had a whole plan. We had lots to do, and we thought that would be enough, but George, in his sly little way, found a true treasure in our very own hometown. Now, he discovered a karaoke bar just a 3-minute walk from us. He led us there, and we sang late into the night. 3 a.m., We were screaming these songs and having the best time of our lives. And I think this is exactly what George does. Not only does he go to places unknown, but the places known, he uncovers more beauty. Now, as his apprentice, I think the real key to George's success as an adventurer really boils down to one thing. He is not afraid to be uncomfortable. That means sleeping anywhere, on the floor, driving through the night. He will do any means possible just to go where he wants to go. That's incredible. And I think it's a once in a generation talent that we should all be in awe of.
So I met George at the most obvious of places, which is the bar. Was introduced to him through our friend Katie. We started talking and getting to know each other a bit, found out that we were kind of into the same type of music. I found out that we were both going to EDC that year, so we exchanged info just to keep in touch. Then you fast forward a few weeks, I needed people for my hotel room. I knew George had some people that could fill up the hotel room, so I asked him, hey, do you need a spot for EDC? And it's a statement to who George is and his character and how much of an adventurer he is when this guy he just met was reaching out to him, and this was the second time we had talked, and he said, yeah, sure, without any hesitation. At EDC, you know, we had a blast together. We ended up staying at a lot of similar stages or same stages to see the same artists. And, you know, of course, George wanted to go wander about, you know, the way he is, and then that worked out too. But, you know, I distinctly remember the moment where I was coming back from my pool party, knowing that George and Charles were both sleeping at that time, and I hear down the hall from the elevator lobby the Space Jam theme song, and I'm thinking to myself, that might be coming from my room. And of course it was, you know, because George just wants to have fun. He wants everyone to have fun, and, you know, he'll take trips anywhere the opportunity presents just to have fun, and that's just who George is.
Yeah. What are we talking about? George Johnson? I fucking love that guy. Oh my God. George Johnson. What a great old chap. But seriously. Met George back in Spain about 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years this fall. We bonded over SEC. Kentucky basketball was fresh off their national title in 2012, and Florida was still kicking our butt in football every year. That's no longer the case. We've got a little winning streak now these days, which never sits well with George. But we had class together. I frequently use the phrase "estoy cansado" because my Spanish sucks. And that's all I had going for me. Eventually lived together in Chicago for a couple years. And you know that George, he's a good egg, but he fights like a girl. You like that? Prost. Oh, I always wanted a brother like George. I do have a brother. We just don't really see eye to eye when it comes to traveling and music and a lot of other stuff. So I've got George for that guy. I see him a couple times a year. We make it happen. Spent some time in Panama together. I would kill for some street meat or some soup right now. That soup we had was like 100 degrees, but it's still the best soup I've ever had. Well, anyway, bud, I guess I'll see you in Washington. Happy 30th, you old man. Join the club. Good seeing you. Oh, it's a little cold, but it goes down smooth. Prost.
Where did I meet George Johnson? Well, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I believe it was on an old wooden ship. Civil War era, if I recall. And this guy, boyish charm, rugged good looks, came walking up to me, and when I started talking to him, I found he had a scholarly mind as well, and I said, I need to be around that guy. It wasn't long after, and quite quickly, that we moved in together. And when we did, I got to know this guy incredibly more. In fact, I got to find out his obscure and unique habits. You know, he would wake up at like 5 in the morning, some god early, awful time. And he'd go and he'd work out and sculpt that wonderful physique. But then, at the end of the day, I thought maybe this guy will roll in. We'll be able to have dinner, have a normal end of day. No. This guy then came about and strolled down, walking from home most days of the week. He'd walk miles and miles and miles, and I'd say, George, you know there's a train in Chicago, right? There's other ways to do this. Oh my God. Getting to know George has been one of the pleasures of my life. And I can honestly, confidently say I'm better for it, with the sole exception that he introduced me to my nemesis, Josh Gates. But we'll get to him another time. This isn't about Josh, this is about George. Sorry, I dropped the camera. Sort of how, on a trip once upon a time, running around with George at midnight on New Year's Eve, screaming, "We won state." George dropped me and broke my ribs. I feel like all of my memories with George are traveling. At least they've turned that way. Obviously, we're not living in Chicago together. We're not living in the same apartment together anymore. And every time we meet up, it's now seemingly in another country, another state, and always another adventure. It's one of the parts that George and I synced on the most. Certainly we both want to be part of building and living in a world that's becoming a better place. But the other side of that is it always involves some level of travel, some level, certainly eating through travel, and some level of adventure. Being able to go down to Panama and visit George while he was in the Peace Corps with my nemesis Josh was I think one of the best trips of my life, and one of the last trips that I had taken before COVID, and had a lot of time to marinate on it. But seeing George in this element, I mean, just a wholly new place, integrating and being part of a community that he wasn't from, didn't natively speak the language of, but did quite a darn good job by the time we got there. And got to explore and just share in an amazing, wonderful spot that's Panama, and that's obviously played a pivotal and important role in his life, because he's finding his better half through that, who corralled us all to bring this video together. It's just been awesome and cool to see.
Well, when I first met George, we were part of Tonlejos, so really distant part of our community in Peace Corps training. And we were part of the same Spanish class, so based on the geography of how our town was laid out and just being in the same Spanish class, George and I were thrown into all kinds of situations together during Peace Corps. And I'm so thankful for it. It was so fun. Always having someone to drink a beer with, chat with, listen to Don Lito go on forever and ever during Tech Week without us saying anything. He would just keep talking, going to Boca's, just so many trips with George, so many good times, and so glad to have met you during Peace Corps and live with you for a year.
Hello. First, I want to give a big thank you to the BBC for allowing me to have this fan moment. I feel so honored to be able to speak about my motivator, the one and only George Alagaya Johnson. Let's see. I started following his work for about 2.5 years ago. And now I'm such a huge admirer, and he's become such an idol to me, and let's be honest, he's not hard on the eyes either. Anyways, I am so inspired by everything that George does. But to just list a few, I love his philanthropic side and his helping of literacy programs in Uganda, his drive for global affairs, and his love for all things sports related. Let's go Guiders! But apart from his long list of accomplishments, he also has a heart of gold. He is so giving, and not only his passion for service as shown throughout his time in the Peace Corps, but also his need to make sure that everyone around him is always happy and laughing is a trait unique to only him. As he says, it's always better to be embarrassing than embarrassed. And he is not afraid to explore, and as he lives by the word of his Lord and Savior, the great and late Anthony Bourdain, who once said, and I quote, "If I'm an advocate for anything, it's to move as far as you can, as much as you can, across the ocean, or simply across the river. The extent to which you can walk in somebody else's shoes, or at least eat their food, it's a plus for everybody. Open your mind, get up off the couch, move." And I truly believe that George has done just that. And I believe he has made his hero proud and will continue to. By moving from Naples to Sevilla to Chicago to Panama to Denver and now to Seattle, he will eat and try anything at least once and basically embodies that adventurous spirit. And he does it all with a smile.
Well, there you have it. You've heard from George's family, friends, colleagues, and fans. He is beloved all over the world, and now you can see why. Having covered this story for the last 30 years, I can truly share my appreciation for this young man. From the day he was born, which understandably canceled my 4th birthday the next day, to now, he has developed a mystique through the stories he tells from his travels. When he travels, he is truly the man with a plan, having fully researched every area he visits. Today, we celebrate the leader, the innovator, the pioneer that is George Alagaya Johnson, and we bask in the awe of his growing shadow. For the BBC, I'm Charles Johnson. Back to you in the studio.
Now, if we're to learn anything from this inspiring young man, it is that life is simply too short to waste being afraid to embrace the complexities and discoveries gained from traversing the unknown. May we all be as brave and open-minded as George Alagaya Johnson, the epic explorer. This is BBC World News. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Good night.
George Johnson, please come to the help desk of the terminal. I repeat, can George Johnson please come to the front desk of the airport terminal? Thank you.
What's up, Papa George? I'm sure you remember that time that we got lost and were looking for each other for like 2 hours in the Italy terminal. But I just wanted to give you a shout out, say happy birthday. I'm here in Mexico City, so I'm waiting for you to come and visit. And I got some plans in the works with the guys to come visit you once you move into Seattle. So I'm hoping that we'll see each other's too. Enjoy that happy 30th, man. I wish we could have enjoyed. I mean, we've gotten some birthdays before, good times in Gainesville, and I'm looking forward to getting some more in the future. Peace, buddy. Enjoy.
You are my favorite child, named George. We love you very much. We're so proud of all that you've done. God bless and wish you a wonderful decade ahead.
Happy birthday, George.
Happy birthday.
Love you.
Love you and God bless.
Bye.
My man George, happy 30th birthday. Wishing you all the best in grad school coming up. Hope to see you soon. And go Gators.
I want to say happy birthday to the great adventurer, George Johnson. I think this is somebody to be respected, somebody that we should all model our behavior off of, and someone we should all aspire to be more like.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, George.
Hope you guys have fun.
Have fun, dirty 30. Good luck celebrating in 30 countries. Be safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
George, pásala bonito por tus 30 años. Disfruta tu cumpleaños al lado de tu familia. Disfruta todo lo que es Guatemala. Y gracias por ser ese buen muchacho.
Best wishes on the 30, George.
Happy birthday, George!
Happy birthday, chums. Welcome to the Big 3-0. I heard there's a lot more joint creaking, a lot less patience, and this is about the time that we start saying things like back in my day. On another note, thank you for 10 years of friendship. I know, weird, can you believe that? 2012 about-ish was when we met, and it's 2022, give or take a few months. But regardless of that, thank you for epic seat-filling days, for countless footy banter, and ultimately being the best Gator football counterpart that has existed.
Feliz cumpleaños, and many good travels ahead.
Happy birthday, George.
Happy birthday, buddy. Excited to see what the next chapter brings for you in Seattle, and hopefully see you on a trip coming to you soon.
Happy birthday, George. 2 favorite things. We are drinking a bottle of wine and traveling to Santorini. Hope you have great 30th birthday and enjoy all your travels, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
I'm just excited that you're doing your 30th birthday and, many birthdays to come. Again, you're my brother, my fellow Redwood, my best friend, and I'll see you soon.
It's your birthday, it's your birthday. Bad bitch contest, you in first place. You in first place, you in first place.
Happy 30th birthday, George. We love you.
Love you, Georgie.
Cheers to you and your big day. I love you, amor. And enjoy.
Just remember, George, I'm drunk enough to kick your ass. Sorry for the language, Mama Johnson. I'll leave you out with this.
Barabajagal, what's his name now? Barabajagal, what's his name now? He very wise in the huddle, Scott Joe Cure now. She can't defeat the pain with his wild flower.